Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
Alyeska Pipeline Service Company, fueling philanthropic programs and dedicated to creating educational and professional opportunities for Alaska Native people.
The National Weather Service.
Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us here at KAKM Studios for Friday's edition of Alaska Weather. Up first, the fire danger map. Most of the high stuff out here in the west, Seward Peninsula, into the Kobuk Valley, and then onto the northwest there, extending into the Noatak Valley, and of course on down to the southwest across much of the Yukon and Kuskokwim Delta. Also, still some high stuff here, northern Cook Inlet, on up to possibly Mananuska Valley, and a couple of spots up here over the interior, north of the Alaska Range. Looking at satellite imagery from yesterday, we had this band of clouds here associated with an upper trough and thunderstorms breaking out during the afternoon on the western edge of that cloud shield there, with clouds and cooler temperatures up along the Arctic coast. Then we're watching a system down here to the south developing, and also another front pushing in toward the western Aleutians. And on today's imagery, you can see that pushed right in, especially in toward Shemya, with rain starting this afternoon, clouds increasing, high stuff here, mid and high stuff, spreading into the Adak area, the precipitation producing clouds still out to the west. And also the storm brought gale force winds earlier today, low center right through there and into Clarence Strait. And actually those gale warnings are out through this evening, with less wind to the north, and rainfall amounts range from about 1/3 to 1/2 inch during the day today at Ketchikan and Annette. Cake picked up about 3/10 inch, otherwise a little bit heavier amounts over toward Wrangell and Petersburg, and just a few hundredths there from Port Alexander on up toward Sitka. Partly sunny here across southern Alaska, Prince William Sound, but showers developing during the afternoon hours. All through this area from the Talkeetnas down into the Chugach Mountains and the Kenai Peninsula, some of those pushing up in and across Turnagain Arm, and low center back here to the west. Thunderstorms developing 50 to 80 nautical miles either side of a line extending from Togiak northeastward up toward Tanana. That whole thing gradually shifting eastward during the afternoon as the trough axis slowly pushes eastward as well, and just some scattered thunderstorm activity over to the east, mostly along the Alaska Range, maybe a couple of strikes in the Copper River Basin, maybe the Talkeetnas, and on up to the northeast. Otherwise, just some clouds, barrel, a few flurries and fog up along the Arctic coast. Wind's pretty light up there, and not too bad on the winds here over the Bering Sea. Clear skies, a lot of clear skies in VFR out over the Bering Sea today from just north of the Fox Islands. Pribilof's mostly sunny today, but those north winds still at about 20 knots there. And that picked up enough moisture here across the southeast Bering Sea to cloud it in on the north side of the Alaska Peninsula with a few showers around Cold Bay, a few showers around Kodiak as well, and clouds on the north side of Atka Island, and then again the clouds spreading in toward Adak with the rain and increasing wind out towards Shemya. And the forecast for tonight, that low really falls to pieces here. We just left with a trough right through this area and some pretty good shower activity up in the northern southeast coast, scattering out down to the south as surface high pressure builds in, but still have aloft southwest to northeast flow coming into the area there, so that's going to make it slow for the showers and precipitation to end. Evening thunderstorms here, Wrangell Mountains, anywhere along the Alaska Range, back on down toward the southwest, Kilbrook Mountains, those areas, with showers diminishing here, Kenai Peninsula, south central Alaska, pretty fair up over the interior. Light wind conditions, look for some IFR, possibly on the central eastern Arctic coast tonight due to low clouds, fog, and flurries, and maybe some mixed precipitation there on the north slopes of the Brooks Range, which obviously higher elevations would see that as snow. And for the Bering Sea, no change, high pressure through this area, keeping winds relatively light. Actually, look for the winds to drop off. That could lead to an increase in low clouds and fog anywhere from the Bering Strait to St. Lawrence Island, all across eastern and central Bering Sea. It probably won't get completely socked in, but when the winds lighten up out there like this, possibilities for those areas to increase pretty good. And that front bringing some gusty winds and rain finally into the central Aleutian areas. It's rain becoming more showery out to the west. Tomorrow that front weakens, still strong enough to put small craft advisories in the marine forecast out there for the AKwx area. Periods of rain, light rain at times, fog, showers, and gusty southwest winds to the west, but still very light winds, areas of low clouds and fog. Could see some more sunshine there for the Pribilofs, the southwest coast up to the Seward Peninsula. Fog and low clouds likely from Chukchi Sea down to St. Lawrence Island. And then thunderstorms once again break out over the southwest interior, northeast along the Kuskokwim Valley, western Alaska Range, and on off to the east. Some pretty good showers now and areas of rain pick up along the North Gulf Coast with showers over to the eastern Kenai Peninsula. Just a chance of showers, risk of an isolated thunderstorm over the Chugach Mountains tomorrow afternoon. Otherwise, high pressure should shut the shower activity off to the south, but kind of lingering over the central and northern areas there. And the warm front here and the system down to the south on Sunday pulls northward just off the coast there. So rain spreading into the area. Looks like a pretty wet day there over the Panhandle on Sunday. Showers and clouds more prevalent over south central Alaska, North Gulf Coast, and a pretty well-developed trough aloft now, so some pretty good showers and thunderstorms breaking out along that trough axis from, again, the southwest right up into the central interior to the eastern Brooks Range, possibly the north slope. Windier and drier, more sunshine there with those northeast winds. Again, 15, 25, maybe gusts of 30 for Kivalina. Kind of diminishing as you drop down through the strait and across the Seward Peninsula to St. Lawrence Island. And a weakening low keeps showers and rain going over the eastern Aleutians here with some scattered showers back along that trough axis out to the west. And from there, looking at temperatures this afternoon, across the Panhandle, 60 degrees at Sitka stands out, and also 62 up at Skagway, lower to mid-50s there to the south, 51 at Klawock, 55 Metlakatla, 57 over at Cordova, about the same at Yakutat. Mid to upper 50s here across the Kenai Peninsula, much of Prince William Sound, but Valdez up to 63. And Big Lake had 69 this afternoon, in the lower 60s up in the valley, with mid to upper 50s there for the Tanana Valley from Fairbanks on down to Northway, 60 degrees at Tanana, 55 up at Bettles, and 39 at Anatuvik, and 45 over at Arctic Village, with 30s up along the Arctic coast there, but Umiat Airfield up to 43, and Shishmaref 36, 51 at Kotzebue, kind of a pretty good range here across the peninsula, 53 at Nome, but just 36 out at Wales, 43 Gamble, 48 at Unalakleet, and 70 at Stony River. One of the warmer locations this afternoon, otherwise 60s down across the delta, 40s along the coast, and out to the west, upper 40s for the Pribilofs, 40s here for all of the Aleutians, over the Alaska Peninsula, Sandpoint up to 52, and into the upper 50s there over northeast Bristol Bay. Lows for tonight, looking mid-20s, mid to upper 20s there for the North Slope and the Arctic coast, 30s over the northwest Seward Peninsula down to St. Lawrence Island, including the Pribilofs, upper 30s to mid-40s for the peninsula, lower 40s for the Aleutians, 40s to near 50 for southern Alaska, as well as the 40s for the Tanana Valley, 40s to near 50 for the Panhandle. Highs tomorrow back into the 65 to 70 degree range here from the southwest coast, right up into the Tanana Valley, and 60s all the way across to Eagle and Fort Yukon. Mid to upper 30s here for the Arctic coast, warmer over the north slope again, like today back into probably the, maybe up to near 50, 40s and 50s in the northwest and 50s to lower 60s for the southeast coast. Flying weather tomorrow morning shows marginal VFR over the northern panhandle, breaking out to VFR in the south. Marginal conditions up across Prince William Sound, southwestward to Kodiak Island. Good VFR forecast here for much of the Bering Sea through the interior. Marginal stuff on the eastern coast there. IFR developing on the central and western coast. And of course the IFR with the front moisture sliding into the western Aleutians. Then by afternoon, that area progresses to the Adak and Atga area and lifts north of Shimianatu. But looking at mostly VFR out here with marginal conditions north side of St. Lawrence Island, up across the Chukchi Basin, increasing IFR along the coast from Barrow all the way down to Cape Lisbarn. And again, scattered thunderstorms along the mountains. And IFR now in the afternoon forecast from Yakutat across Prince William Sound, probably into Portage. Excuse me. Anatuvik VFR, same forecast for Adigan, Lake Clark and Merrill. VFR becoming marginal as showers develop and clouds build. Same trend for rainy. VFR gradually becoming marginal into the afternoon. Windy, same forecast. That same forecast also for the eastern Alaska Range, Isabella Mentasta. Tanita should be VFR the entire day. Portage looking marginal with possible IFR in the eastern approach. Chilkoot and White starting out marginal, becoming VFR. And for the freezing levels, we've got, again, the cooler air mass up here to the north, 2,000 to 4,000 feet, just south of the Berks Range, actually across the upper Yukon there. And then about 6,000 feet here over southern Alaska, 8,000 feet over the central Aleutians, and just a broad area of 6,000 feet or so along the Kodiak Island, across the Gulf to the Panhandle. Icing shaping up like this, above about 7,000 feet of mostly the light rime variety there for the central Aleutians. Also here mixed icing with the showers and thunderstorms here along the Alaska Range off to the west, up to the northeast, and then with the remnants of that moisture coming up from the southeast here. Areas of rime to possibly mixed, mostly above 5,000 feet. And south, again, even though surface high Percy is building in, you still have this southwest flow at about 120 knots coming across the Panhandle. So that's going to make for a slow end to the showers and precipitation. And then northerly jet 90 to 60 knots coming through the Bering Strait to cross St. Lawrence Island, turning easterly. Southern jet well to the south, and then there's a trough axis right through here that's going to get a little more pronounced on Sunday. For 9,000 feet, south to southeast, 20 to 25 off the coast, much lighter over the Panhandle, 20 knots through the Yukon. Southwesterlies, maybe up to 10 knots here over the eastern and southern interior, but pretty light up to the north. Westerlies maybe up to 20 there along the Brooks Range. Southeast flow or east-southeast, 15 to 20 knots across the northern Bering Sea. Pretty light for the Alaska Peninsula. Not much punch left to that low center at all. And then ahead of this front, as it lifts northward, they'll carry these stronger winds with it, with 30 knots now north of the central Aleutians on back toward the Russian coast. Much the same pattern at 3,000 feet. High pressure here over the Russian Far East, kind of ridging into the southwest interior a little bit there. Northerly flow at about 15, south to north 10 to 15 or 5 to 15 knots, Gulf of Alaska, across the central interior. And southwest or southeast, 10 knots across the Panhandle, picking up to 20 knots over the northern areas there and also off the coast. Taking a look at turbulence, a little bit of light to isolated moderate chop here below about 6,000 feet with the front, weakening front as it pushes eastward slowly. And then also northern Panhandle areas over into the southeast interior. Could be some mechanical turbulence with those southerly winds, a little tighter gradient, all that below about 5,000 feet. And after a hangar flying, I'll be back with a look at the ice edge and marine forecasts.
Good evening, I'm Harry Keeling, and on behalf of the Alaskan Aviation Safety Foundation and Alaska Public Media, welcome to Hangar Flying. Our guest tonight is Kerry Long. Kerry's been on the program a number of times before. He is currently the FAA Regional Administrator for the Alaskan region, and I think come July it will be 2 years. Kerry's got a very distinguished career with the FAA and the NTSB. He's been chief counsel, and when he came to Alaska, I could tell immediately that he really was looking forward to his new job, and he was really going to be a benefit to Alaskan aviators. So it's nice to have you back.
Pleasure to be here, Harry. Thank you.
So let's talk about the important things first. Tomorrow's the pancake breakfast.
Yes.
You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes, aside from the fact that I'm going to flip pancakes again, it's a marvelous opportunity to get people of all ages together. It's a fly-in and a breakfast, and it's actually pancakes, and to just talk about safety, have people fly in safely. Palmer's a great airport. They were used it's one of the gateway airports when the president visited, and flight service folks up there are great folks. So it's just a good opportunity to get families together to come on in for breakfast. To, just get all sorts of people. Folks up there, and I'll mention their names up there when I'm there, have been very helpful to us over time to have this event. But I'll be flipping them, and I'll flip for anybody who asks.
Well, it's a great tradition, and it goes back as long as I can remember, and it's a great opportunity, like you say, for the FAA to interact with aviators and aviation people in Alaska. So we appreciate you putting it on. The one question I would like to ask you, well, maybe a couple of questions, because it's been a while since we've talked, but one of them is fairly timely, and that is a couple of weeks ago, the FAA office here issued a letter to Part 135 operators around the state, and there was an article about it in the newspaper. Can you talk a little bit about that letter and what your intent was?
I sure can, and it was the concept of Clint Weiss, who's our Director of Flight Standards Division here, and it came out of a significant concern we've all had, including you, over accidents caused by controlled flight into terrain, which has many, many reasons, but among them are ones where pilots are flying in visual flight rules, and they go into instrument meteorological conditions, don't realize it, they want to keep on going or whatever, and end up with power on crashing, whether it be in that sad case of Misty Fjords where you crash right into a cliff face, or you just go right into the ground because you don't know where you are. And so this was an attempt to say, kind of the way we remind people of things. Again, sometimes you have to remind mathematicians about arithmetic. So this is about, hey, there are some things you need to think about. You're a 135 carrier, you have all these requirements that we impose on you as the FAA, but get back to basics and think about things. And there are, I think, 7 or 8 questions with some proposed statements below them and answers and things by us as regulators, but as us who are folks who would much rather regulate than see planes get into dire straits and not be able to survive. And it's been a big issue up here, and the purpose was to help save lives. When I was with the NTSB, the current chairman, Chris Hart, and I spoke once, and I basically said, what's the biggest issue in your mind? And he said, it's controlled flight into terrain. So that's an issue up here. We're always going to have an issue, not meant to be down on anybody or anything like that, but just to say, be concerned about this. Think about this. Make sure your folks and the way you run your business and the way you fly your airplane, you consider these kinds of issues. So I thought it was a great letter myself, and I know some folks thought it was a little bit too, oh, you're telling us you're not doing your job, you're putting it all on us. Absolutely not. Only about saving lives.
And the reality, Kerry, is this. You and I have talked about this so many times. We are not talking about bending metal on sandbar landings. We are talking about fatal and serious injury accidents. We're talking about a goal to keep it less than 16, and I think if you look back a full year, we're up 24 or something. We already busted that. It's about saving lives. It's about saving people from serious injuries. We've got to do something about it, and we've got to all work together to make that happen.
Absolutely. We have never done that ourselves. We can't even try. We simply are part of the solution, and look forward to all of the cooperation of the community that we get typically.
You know, we're going to run out of time here. I'd like to get you on maybe one more time and talk a little bit about congestion in the Anchorage Bowl and the importance of procedures and altitudes and things like that.
Be delighted.
Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed tonight's program. And again, the whole gist of what Carrie's talking about is we have got to reverse this trend with FSI accidents. We've got to start saving lives instead of losing them in aircraft accidents. Tune in next time and we'll talk to Carrie a little bit about a concern we've got with people flying the right procedures, particularly in the Anchorage Bowl. Until then, fly safe.
Welcome back. Well, sea surface temperatures warming up pretty good here in North Gulf Coast and Prince William Sound, about 10 to 13 Celsius, and also some yellow areas here showing up in Kuskokwim Bay, and pretty warm, or warming up there for the Norton Sound area. Even some green out here into the Pribilof Islands and the Aleutians. And the ice edge this afternoon looking like this. Everything continuing to do a slow dissolve here, what's left around St. Lawrence Island, the northern Bering Sea, and areas opening up through the strait into the Chukchi Basin, and still some pretty open areas there along the western Arctic coast. From right about there on over to roughly Barrow, and kind of a large area of thinner and less concentrated ice on the east side. And for the marine forecast, pretty light down on the south coast tomorrow, but southerly 20 knots, picking up the small craft advisory levels there with 10-foot seas. For the north coast, south winds 30 knots, northern Lynn Canal, otherwise southeast at 15 here for the central and southern inside waters, with seas running 3 to 4 feet. Then for Sunday, small craft advisories picking up here 25 to 30 knots right out of the south, and then east 30 for the north central coast, but for the extreme north up there, north at 15. North winds 20 knots for northern Lynn Canal, southeast 15 for Stevens Passage, southeast 20 for Stevens Passage, southeast 15 for Clarence Strait. And for Prince William Sound tomorrow, southeast winds 20 knots, light southwesterlies for Cook Inlet, and also Shelikof Strait and the east side of Kodiak Island, otherwise southeast 15 here, Barren Islands in the western North Gulf Coast, picking up to 25 knots for the central coast. And then the Sunday outlook, southwest 10 to 15 here across Kodiak Island, light and variable winds for the Barren Islands there with 5-foot seas, southeast about 15 for the North Gulf Coast, east variable to east at 15 Prince William Sound, south to southwest 15 knots for Cook Inlet. And for Bristol Bay tomorrow, south at 15, otherwise west southwesterlies here for the peninsula at about 10 knots, more southerly but staying light there from Castle Cape up to Sitkinak. And on Sunday, a little more general wind, but only at about 15 knots out of the southeast with 4 to 5-foot seas across the peninsula. Same thing for Bristol Bay. And moving out to the Aleutians, for the Fox Islands tomorrow, kind of variable at 10 knots here, anywhere from southwest to southeast. Pretty light, and then small craft advisories. That front holds together enough to keep those 25-knot winds in the forecast for tomorrow, 7 to 10-foot seas. Dropping back to 20 knots, and then back toward the main low center, those southerlies kick up to 25. And looking ahead to Sunday, westerlies here for Adak and Atka behind whatever's left of that front at about 15 knots, actually just an elongated trough, and kind of light and variable, 10 to 15 or 5 to 15 knots for the eastern Aleutians, and southerlies 15 knots out west. For the southwest coast, north to northeast, 20 knots with 4 to 5-foot seas, northeast 20 here for St. Matthew Island, northeast 15 for the Pribilofs, and pretty light northerlies for St. Lawrence Island. Those pick up to 20 knots on Sunday through that area, but just 10 knots north of Nunivak Island, then turning east at about 15 for Kuskokwim Bay, and east at 10 for the Pribilofs, north 15 for St. Matthew Island. Along the Arctic coast on the east side, south to southeast at 15, turning southwest there around the central coast, and then winds increasing to 25 knots in the afternoon here on the west side, then back down to 15 to northwest 15 from Wales to Cape Beaufort. And then for Sunday from Wales to Cape Thompson, those winds pick up to 25 knots. Good for some small craft advisories there. Northerlies 20 knots west side to the central coast, becoming a little more variable and lighter. Northwest to southwest 15 knots as you head over toward Demarcation Point. And for tonight again, thunderstorms this evening, diminishing gradually throughout the night and evening hours here from the southwest up along the Alaska Range, and also showers tending to taper off here over the Kenai Peninsula, south central Alaska, kind of persisting through this area, and pretty good showers up over the northern panhandle. That storm system really washed out, and we just have a trough through here. This area of rain will pull back to the west, and high pressure will, at the surface, will shut the showers off over the southern southeast coast. Maybe some clearing still lingering, especially over the northern panhandle. Periods of rain and showers for the North Gulf Coast from Elfin Cove, possibly Juneau westward across Prince William Sound, maybe into Seward. Should be a partly sunny day for Cook Inlet into the Matanuska and Susitna Valley with afternoon showers, isolated thunderstorms along the mountains, again a little more prevalent back here to the west along this trough axis, cutting eastward across the upper Tanana Valley. Chance of snow, fog, IFR, western Arctic coast on down toward Cape Lisburne. Pretty nice again here through the west from the western North Slope areas on down to the Yukon Delta. And a weakening front pushes across the Aleutians, and that just develops a weak low for some moisture there for the eastern Aleutians. Again, a sharper trough, a pretty good area of precipitation from the central interior down to about Denali Park up to the northeast with thunderstorm activity, showers in the south, more rain for the panhandle as that front pushes northward. Well, have a great weekend, and I'll see you again tomorrow.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.